Hi, friends. Welcome to Real World Plant-Based Diet. I have a real treat for you today. I'm doing an interview with my friend Stephanie James from Lafayette, Louisiana, the great state of Louisiana. And Stephanie is all about real world plant-based diet. She has so much experience. She is full of great tips, tricks for doing things quick, easy, healthy. And she, just like me, has been on a plant-based diet for almost going on a decade now. So she has just as much experience as Simon, my husband, and I do. And we are just going to dive into some topics that will hopefully be helpful for y'all. And she has a great weight loss story and she has great tips and tricks. So I think we're just going to dive in. Stephanie, thank you for being interviewed. And if you would like to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your weight loss journey and your plant-based diet journey.
Yeah. Thank you for having me so much. Real World Plant-Based Diet. You should do a little jingle. uh, yes, I was 306 pounds originally, and I went to good old Jenny Craig, and I followed them methodically for about 7 months. And then I went, I don't think this is working for me anymore. And that was the scariest moment, I think, of the whole journey was do this thing exactly as they tell you to do and you will get there. But then it stopped getting there. And I had to sort of take back the agency over the food and say, okay, I have to switch, but I'm afraid to, because what if they're right and I'm wrong? So that's when I first realized, oh, I can try different things and experiment with my body. And I don't have to always be losing weight. It's okay if I just stop. And I would consciously stop losing weight sometimes. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. It's too much to think about. I'm just going to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that a lot when I lost all that weight.
When you reached the point that you could reach with Jenny Craig,
Mm-hmm.
how much weight had you lost at that point?
About 60.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like 169 now, and I'm 5'8".
Okay. Cool.
So it was a lot, but but if you saw me, I was still very, very big.
Mm-hmm.
Like it took a long time for people to say, holy shit,
So,
for a long time, I was still a really big person. So there was all that mental work and resilience you had to have, because you couldn't depend on other people to give you feedback, because I was so big.
yeah.
Big was big.
Yeah. And when you took breaks and were kind of experimenting and trying to figure it out and maintain, did you ever have times where you started gaining weight again?
I never went over 10 pounds.
Okay.
I have to say I didn't yo-yo, because I made a couple of commitments when I started this. I said, I'm going to get this weight off. I'm going to do it in a way that is sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do it in a way that I'm not going to be worried that I'm going to gain it back.
Yeah.
And the last one was, I'm going to do the emotional work, because I ate emotionally for sure.
Yeah.
And I kept those commitments to this day. And I don't even know where that came from when I first started. I just didn't want to yo-yo. I didn't want this to take over my life. And I felt very strongly that if I could take agency over what I put in my mouth, what more could I do with my life? Mm-hmm. What more was possible? Because what you do in the silence of your own room, in your own kitchen, when nobody else is around, takes such an amount of bravery and courage, because there's nobody clapping for you. Nobody gives a crap, Oh, guess what? I ate on my plate today. It says, yay, nobody. Balloons don't go off. Mm-hmm. They just say, hey, you want a cupcake? So there's so much internal cheerleading you have to do for yourself. I can remember working out to like Leslie Sanson's Walk Away the Pounds, where you're just marching. Mm-hmm. And my mom had come over, and I was really, really, really big, like a size 28. And she was sitting at the kitchen table watching me do this Leslie Sanson. And a part of me wanted to just scream at her. She didn't say a word. She didn't say good job or let me walk with you. She was just looking at me, thinking, who knows what? I don't know what she was thinking. Yeah. But it was moments like that where I sort of like grew up from what other people thought about me so much. And I said, I have to do this for me. And the really cool thing is once I got small enough that people really, really noticed, I didn't care what they thought.
Yeah.
By the time I got to that point, I was like, are you kidding? I've been working on this like a couple years now, boo. Nice of you to come by. you know, you know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't, nobody like did it for me. I had to want it more. And I'll tell you one more little thing that happened early on in Jenny Craig. I remember telling my husband at the time, screaming, because I would always eat at night, overeat at night, sugar or chocolate at night before I went to bed. And I couldn't do that. I was choosing not to do that. And he goes, well, you're going to be fine. And I said, you don't understand. I want to eat. I was so mad. I was so upset. Like, nobody understands how bad I want to eat right now. Like, I could feel that rage inside of me, all of that coming up. And I just was writing that little Jenny Craig book. Oh, I want to eat. This little journal. Of course, now there's like 4,000 kind of journals. But back then it was this little binder. I'm like, I need more paper. So it's tough. Like, you're literally facing yourself.
Yeah.
You are facing yourself, and nobody can pull you out of it but yourself. You know, so it's a tough one.
So at the time, your husband, was he trying to somehow get you to stop eating junk at night, or was he trying to support you when you were white knuckling and not eating junk at night?
Yeah, he was supportive, but he was also more neutral. He didn't really cheerlead, but he didn't really get in my way either. So he was like the neutral cheerleader. Like, I'm just going to watch what you do. I'm going to step in caca either way. So I'm just going to pull back and let you do your thing.
Yeah. And he did the same thing every time you started moving more and more plant-based. He's like, okay, if that's what you need to do, even though he wasn't necessarily wanting to eat that way himself. I mean, that's a big topic for a lot of people, is their partner or who they live with in their household doesn't necessarily want to go plant-based. But we've reached the point where we understand, yes, this is best for my health, for the planet, the animals, all the reasons you could do it. And I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about how that went when he wasn't plant-based and you were?
He was very easy. He's always been very, very easygoing. So he would just cook meat on the side, or I would cook a little bit and throw it on stuff, right?
Yeah.
But once I got into like protective diet, where the recipes were really, really, really tasty, there was a lot that he liked. So I just started making a list of all the stuff that he liked. And then, like, if it was my birthday and I'd say, well, I want a vegan cake, and here's a really easy one in Happy Herbivore Cookbook. You know, and he would make it, you know? So, but it was like little, like, baby steps over time. And then he saw the change in me. And then the other thing was, he had gotten a kidney stone and he had like gout. And so he started eating more like me, because those things just poof, poof, poof went away, or they didn't reoccur again. And when he would eat more meat stuff, he would get the gout again. So that was just his experience. I'm not a doctor, but that was his experience. So he still eats meat now and stuff, but he has always respected how I eat. And I did have to say sometimes, like, please don't get me candy and bring it back, even if you're just trying to be nice, because it's not helping me. I need to bring me a flower, bring me a card, bring me, so you are simultaneously training other people how to treat you, especially the people that live in your house.
Yeah.
And it's tough because we show love through junk food, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the society that we live in. It's sort of set up that way. So yeah, you touched on some great topics there around mindset. And when you talked about like what you do in your kitchen when nobody's looking, and that this whole thing, it can be an absolute learning process, maturing process, growing up, becoming an adult. And we're doing it all through food. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you ever read the books of or followed Janine Roth, but she wrote that book, Women, Food, and God. And she said, it's all right there. It's
Oh
all
yeah.
right there on your plate. It's like the whole window to your relationship with your body, mind, spirit, the world, all of it. I think you and I have both gone through a lot of that. And it's like, as I've gotten into working with people on transforming their health, the number one key thing that I start with is mindset. Because if the mindset's not there, it's like,
Hmm.
not, you can go get the Jenny Craig plan, you can download the PDF, you can go shop and get every single food.
Hmm.
But if your mindset is not there, it's you had made that commitment to yourself that you were going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was lucky to see Janine up in Massachusetts, Kripalu.
Yeah.
And I remember the one thing she said, she goes, it's not about the food, but it's not about the food.
Mhm. Yep.
And she would say, pay attention to your inner climate between meals. Pay attention to what's going on inside of you in between the meals.
Mhm.
I mean, she was so profound. She is so profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good reference. Anybody should read her stuff if
Yeah.
you're dealing with weight stuff.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about how you started getting more and more plant-based? And then that leads into, you mentioned it real briefly about protective diet foods, which your husband at the time loved, were
Oh
so
yeah.
delicious. And that's how you and I met in protective diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I had just gone vegan and I think it was around 2012. I had a mentor at the time that I homeschooled. I was learning how to homeschool and stuff. And I don't know, I think I was talking about energy. And she says, well, have you ever considered maybe eating vegetarian? I was like, no. Well, just try it and see if you have more energy. Just see how you feel. So I did, and I kind of liked it.
Mhm.
And then that's all she wrote. But then it was hard to find. I was still eating all, meat and things. So how could I get that same satisfaction of flavor? Because I wasn't at the place where my palate could just pop in a sweet potato. I'm like, what? Who does that? So that's when somebody on another group said, try Julie's recipes on protective diet. I said, okay. And I just did the free ones for a long time,
Mhm.
like the cheese sauce and making nachos and Alfredo stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like such a hack. How does she do this? This is amazing. And so that was the first time I went, oh, you can really make this stuff taste like or really close. And in fact, even anytime I have meat eaters in my company, I know I can pull from there and pretty much they'll eat it. You
Yeah.
know, they might say this tastes like a gourd,
Yeah.
like a pumpkin, for the cheese or something, but they're like, but yet it works. So that happened, and I stayed with that for a good while. But then the funny thing happened is my palate changed. And so now I can just eat a sweet potato with a little cinnamon on it and bring it to school. Big deal. Which is funny because I did that because I liked the food because they tasted like my old foods. But in the process, my palate changed so much that I didn't really care anymore.
Yeah, that happened with us too. And I think that just happens when eating plant-based, like healthy plant-based, no oil plant-based for as long as we have. That doesn't mean I'm perfect, healthy, perfect, no oil. We go out to restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
we do things. But eating plant-based for that amount of time, like my husband is to the point now where he just the thought of animal flesh, like he's just like, that's not appealing to him at all.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even like most of the meat replacements because
Mm-hmm.
he's like, nah, I'd rather just have a burger made out of beans and oats. You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that palate that really responds to just fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, like that comes from long-term eating a healthy plant-based diet, and
Yeah.
probably not going back and forth too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then my story is pretty similar. It was about 2012. 2012, I went vegetarian. And then 2013, I believe, is when I found Protective Diet and Julie. We're for people's benefit, we're referring to protectivediet.com. I'll put the link in the information down below. And the founder of that, Julie and Jerry Christensen, but Julie has made the best healthy plant-based recipes that either Stephanie or I have ever tasted.
Oh yeah.
She still to this day has over 100 free recipes on the site. Just poke around, go check it out. And then at different points over time, Stephanie and I have both been paid members of the group where we got video training and then a bunch more recipes. But then we've gone kind of in and out of that group. There's a lot of benefit there for preventing and reversing disease by being very, very strict with the whole food, plant-based, no oil. If you have any heart problems, even common cancers, different things like that, you can do a lot. And I talk about that on this channel as well. But I think for you and I, Stephanie, like we're both healthy, we both have a social life, and we like that idea of being 100% perfect with anything. It just, doesn't resonate with me that much, and hence real world plant-based diet, progress, not perfection. So that's where I've kind of gotten away from any sort of really strict plan or, you must eat this way. You and I have adapted this to our lifestyles. Do you want to talk about how you've made that happen for yourself?
Yeah. Well, let's see. You mean like school or social?
But all of it. Yeah. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about how that's changed over the years and maybe where you're at right now and how you have to adapt that because of how busy you are.
Oh, well, when I was married and I was homeschooling, my son would even say, Mama, you're in the kitchen all the time. Why are you always cooking in the kitchen? I'm like, because these things take a long time. Because it's not a lean cuisine. And I'd be like, don't eat that too fast. It took me like an hour to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was getting like a little obsessive. He probably was right. Just maybe he was right. So I went from like that level, right? And then I started working more. And so then I started just finding things that didn't take so much time. And so I sacrificed maybe the flavor that I enjoyed to just like get some food in me and keep going. Cause I was really enjoying working again. And then, when I divorced, my social life just kind of like woke up. It was woke. And I, had gone, 12, 15 years, just always being at home, like super frugal, super, and I didn't even know where to go to a restaurant. Like I kid you not, we weren't even going to restaurants anymore, nor did I want to, because it was too much of a pain in the butt. Well, that is not how most people live. I'm just saying. Okay. I was in a big bubble.
Yes.
And I'm still struggling with it. Like the other day I went to a restaurant and I'm like, can you give me some rice? Can you give me some steamed vegetables? And they still have oil in the rice, or they still have those I'm like, how does it still have butter on it when I said just plain? But I really do believe they think I didn't mean it. No, because nobody does that. Well, you have to have a little butter. Well, you have to have a little oil. I'm like, no, I don't. And so then sometimes I kind of lie and I'm like, I have a really bad gallbladder and a really bad stomach and I'll get sick. And then they kind of listen, or they just can't believe that it's actually any good, that the food is actually good, just like that. And I can taste the oil and I'm like, oh, yeah. And every now and then I'll just eat it anyway if I'm like really starving. Cause as much as I want to say I'm that person that packs a potato, if I were by myself or I'm in the coffee shop, I'll just whack a potato and like nobody really sees, But when you're with a group of people in a nice restaurant, do you know how tacky it looks?
Yeah.
To pull out a potato.
I think it's so funny what you said about the restaurants thinking, no, she doesn't really want that without. And I think maybe where you and I both live, like, cause we're both in the South and I'm in Memphis and Stephanie's in Louisiana, and maybe better on the East Coast and on the West Coast or Chicago, bigger cities. But where we live, I think like I have to ask about sides all the time, like vegetables that are listed on the menu. Like, does that actually have meat in it? Do you have pork in
Mhm.
there? Do you have bacon in there?
Mhm.
So, we're not living in the maybe best region for keeping
Mm-mm.
animal products and the fats out of the foods.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's sometimes I'll eat before we go. And
Mhm.
then I'll say, "Oh, I'm really full. I was just so hungry when I got home from." I lie. I mean, I just say I got home from school and I was starving, and so now I'm just really not that hungry. I'm gonna have some tea, and it makes other people more uncomfortable than I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, but they're visibly uncomfortable. I mean, even when you say it's no big deal, I'm totally fine. They think you're starving.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing I learned being plant-based and really trying to stick as close as I can to being plant-based is that you kind of get over being hungry sometimes.
Mhm.
You just kind I think it was Lindsay Nixon that said, every meal doesn't have to be Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I remember her saying that somewhere because it's true. And you kind of go, but it's just a meal. I'm going to be home in like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to die. It's really not a big deal. But most people don't think that way. They don't,
Yeah.
like my blood sugar is going to go down and I'm going to, like
Yeah.
you
Well,
can't do that. That's what we live for. That's what makes us all happy. Like, why would you not do that? So I'm still kind of navigating it. I try to change the subject and let's just talk about other things or
mhm.
they feel and they'll tell me, Stephanie, there's nothing you can eat here. We already looked.
Mhm.
Or Stephanie, we can't go here again because remember you couldn't find anything to eat. Like they feel bad.
Mhm.
I mean, it's sweet and sad. So I'm still trying to figure it out because you care about your friends and they care about you and they really it's just misplaced empathy. You know what I mean?
I think I'm on a little different part of that spectrum as far as eating out. Like my husband and I have always enjoyed eating out. We love going to restaurants, bars, socializing with friends. I mean, we're really missing it now in these
Hmm.
quarantine times we're living in. But so for us, and because we're living right in the heart of a city now, which is great, but even when we lived in small town Michigan, we would find what we could eat at restaurants that was either vegan, vegetarian, a little bit of cheese. I've talked about this on the channel that, if it's one meal a week that I'm getting takeout or going out to a restaurant,
Yeah.
has a little bit of cheese, that's okay. I'd rather, have decent quality food with a little bit of cheese on it than be worrying about 100% plant-based or no oil. And so for us,
Yeah.
we're okay because we know, similar to what you were saying, because we know it's one meal.
Yes.
Like, out of all the meals I ate in a week, and I did a little video about this, about a grading scale. If you want to be A, B grade eaters, you can have 1 to 2 meals a week that aren't plant perfect, and you're still
Mhm.
A grade eating, and you can have up to like 4 meals a week. So I don't worry about, we get takeout like once a week. And so for me, I don't necessarily like just eat before or try to order steamed vegetables. I just order a veggie meal and I don't worry about it. And so,
Yeah.
but that's one area where you're like, I think even stronger than I am with your principles of, no, I really do want rice and vegetables.
Yeah.
Or,
And I think it's, well, for me, it's also educating the restaurants.
yes.
I look at it like I'm helping because where I live, people just don't eat like this. I mean, they don't. They don't have any vegan options. They barely have a vegetarian option. And that's usually only if it's like a Chili's or something where they have it in there already.
Yeah.
But they're like, what? What? Or you say really, really light feta. If I'm having like a veggie pizza, I'll try this. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not life.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll eat it anyway, and then I get a stomach ache. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's just, so I try to see it like, what can I do to honor myself? Because we eat out a lot now.
Mhm.
And all that stuff will start catching up with me and I won't feel so good. So it's just striking that balance. And I guess it's a little different for everybody,
Mhm.
what your body can tolerate, what kind of weight you want to maintain, is it a big deal,
Yeah.
so and then just it being in the house,
Mhm.
like if you're living with someone, my environment was like pristine, and now there's like mini M&Ms laying around. I'm like, oh my gosh, you cannot leave that stuff out.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I wouldn't even touch it. And then one day I had a couple, and then it was like, oh my gosh, it's like I was hooked, And so now it's like, no more, or put them in a different drawer, because those things are so highly palatable that it'll bring your palate back to that place. And then I don't even think about a banana anymore. So it's definitely been like a little turbulence, just trying to figure it out and work with other people. I don't know there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's just some sort of balance that you find within yourself.
Mhm.
And as you, like when you build that inner muscle on the inside where you don't care so much what people think, but you can care enough what they think to make it some kind of effort sometimes. And then there's times when I don't make an effort and I say, I'm not going to eat that, because if I don't let them know what's important to me, how will they know? Then I'm just being a people pleaser, right? But I also want to show I'm caring and I'm not like the food Nazi.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of like striking that balance.
Mhm.
And it's different every time. And look, some days I'm tired. I don't feel like bringing any freaking food to something. I'm exhausted, and sometimes I am. So it's just getting to know yourself, what's important to you. Is it the relationships that are important to you? Is it your body that's important to you? Is both important to you? So how can you make both important? How can you say, you know what I'm saying? And some things I just don't even want. Like I see their like down here, it's seafood is the big thing.
Yeah.
And doesn't that, Stephanie, do you want some? No, no, I don't.
That's how Simon and I are with any actual meat. It's like, no, none at all.
No.
And I'm not, and people who are watching this channel, and if you are just, starting to make that transition and you're still having meat-based meals, we were there, we were both there.
Oh yeah.
We transitioned from a standard American diet, and we
Mm-hmm.
have now reached the point where it's not appetizing to us. And there also may be people completely vegan for the animals who may hear me say, oh, a little bit of cheese. And they're like, no, I would, never. And so it's just, everybody is on their own path for weight loss, for plant-based
Yeah.
eating, for their own body, for their relationships, everything that we talked about. So one thing,
Yeah. And I do think the more that we can educate the restaurants,
yeah,
like we went to one the other night and I said, let's see if we can make a good vegan pizza here, or at least lightly vegetarian.
yeah.
And they actually did pretty good. There are some things I'm going to keep tweaking, but we can educate them and it can be kind of fun. And then everybody at the table's like, where did you get?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, we
it
do
can be
that.
fun too.
We do that at restaurants too, and we ask the questions, and then they're like, okay, I feel like if you go to that restaurant and start asking, then they're like, oh, people are starting to ask for vegetarian things. People are starting to ask for
Yes.
vegan things here. So that's
Yes.
great. So you had mentioned a little bit about sometimes I'm tired and I don't feel like preparing all my food to take to something. So let's talk about food prep, meal planning. I am a huge meal planner. I think if you have planned meals for the week, you
Mm-hmm.
plan to have leftovers of those meals, and you put together a plan, you go grocery shop, and then I have everything in the house that I need to make these meals. And then
Mm-hmm.
just set up for success versus like scrounging around the house. Oh, what could I put together with this random bag of potatoes and a can of tomatoes? you know.
It's so true.
And
It's
I know that you're great
whew.
at this. So do you want to talk about like your busy schedule and how you prepare the healthy foods?
Yeah. Well, I'm a teacher,
Mhm.
so I bring my lunch every day, and I pre-make my breakfasts.
Mhm.
And yeah, I do like overnight oats in jars, because
Mhm.
you can change them into whatever you want. Just put some chia seeds in it, and it'll. So, and I just put out 5 little jars and make them. I'm like, what do I say? Cook once, eat thrice.
Yeah.
Like, how many meals can I get out of this 20 minutes I'm fixing to spend? Because time is money. in my opinion. So I want to know, how many servings can I get out of that Instant Pot that took me maybe 10 minutes to throw it in there?
Yep.
Oh, 6? We're going to make you again. Okay, you good. So that, and I think having sauces that you like, and there's a lot of like, what's his name? Wellness, Well the World. That dude that has that channel, Well This World. I don't know. Anyway, he has all these sauces that don't have any oil in them.
Oh.
And I was just reading, like, Primal Kitchen makes a Hawaiian barbecue with like no sugar, no oil, which is ironic. I wouldn't have thought to even open that up and look on the container. But there's so many sauces you can use to jazz up a potato or jazz up some rice or millet or whatever. And I also use jalapeno peppers all the time. I keep them. I buy like the big 10-gallon ones. They're called Cajun Chef down here.
Oh.
And it's like $10, and I just refill that jar over and over again. So jalapeno peppers go on everything. Sauerkraut, that Bubby's sauerkraut is so delicious. And it gets you the probiotic and a little bit of salt and capers, all these little condiments that you can put on the top. It's like amazing. Everything, it just tastes so much better. Little pepper jelly.
Yeah, we're always kicking stuff up with sauces, and I have certain sauces that I feel go with certain things. And
yes,
it can be just as basic as like when I cook Southern style things like Hoppin' John or jambalaya or etouffee, and that has to have Louisiana hot sauce.
Yes.
Of course. And then when I make anything that's more Mexican style, a tamale pie or some tostadas or anything, we really like that Cholula hot sauce. And so we now buy Cholula in the big bottle. We buy Louisiana in the big bottle. And it's amazing how just a little bit, picking it up a bit, and it makes your palate happy.
Yes. Because starches are such an open palate. So you can put barbecue sauce on a potato. You can put like an orange sauce on a potato. You can put apples on a potato. I mean, you can put, like, the sky is the limit.
Peanut sauce over rice or over noodle. Then you can dress up rice. You can dress up noodles. You can potatoes.
So yes,
basic starch, and there's so many different ways. I mean, think ethnic, because ethnic sauces and seasonings are great. And then I must admit, like, wintertime, I am not huge on salads. Like, this whole idea of having a salad when it is cold out. But I do reach a point where I've had big bowls of starchy meals, and then I'm like, how can we get some greens or some chopped cilantro or chopped parsley or something? I do start wanting to load up with a little bit of greens and veggies when I'm too starch heavy.
Yes. I've heard several people say this: beans, grains, and greens. So when I'm making something in an Instant Pot, I just okay, here's my grain. Here's a little, it could be like chopped kale, pre-chopped and frozen, and I just sprinkle it in. Okay, that's good. And I put a little beans in there and maybe onions and, just whatever I have on the seasoning rack, and I did that the other day, and I set it on the Instant Pot on delay. And when I came in from school, I was like, oh my gosh, it was the best smell. And it was hot. And I was like, I felt so loved by myself, like it was like the best feeling to walk into that. And you can do that for yourself. And it's so, so nurturing. And then you eat it and it feels good and it tastes good. Like you're not craving the junk because you're satisfied on so many levels, like emotionally, in your home, you feel safe and cozy. I think the more we can do things like that, like make food this experience of, I'm doing this because it feels good in my body.
Yeah.
Not like because I have to.
Yeah. I have another friend. She happens to be named Stephanie here in Memphis. She's vegan and she loves to cook a lot and does a lot of homemade prep for her family. And she has this little saying that she uses. She's like, oh, my future self is going to love me for this.
Yeah.
So she'll be like, you were in the kitchen and putting the Instant Pot ready so that you have a hot dinner when you come home from work. And she'll say, oh, my future self is going to love me for this.
And this brings me to something about nourishing ourselves as women too, because all of the teachers that I work with are women. And it's interesting to me because I don't know what they eat at the rest of the time of the day, but they come in with like their lunch is like iceberg salad with cheese and a little meat. And I'm like, how is that sustaining you? I mean, it's literally teeny tiny little portion. Or I've seen some of them bring literally a piece of meat, like a chicken fried steak or a pork chop or a beef steak, and they'll just eat that. And I'm like, how, huh? Like, what?
Yeah.
And they do tend to be a bit overweight. And I'm thinking, well, I would too, because I would go home and eat everything. I would just raid my house. I would be starving, like really starving. So I wonder, as women, we're giving to all these people and all this energy, but we don't even take time to properly fuel ourselves.
Mhm.
Really, like I'm saying about the grains and the beans, I mean, even if you're not plant-based, just a plop of meat, like that's what you would throw a dog. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, it's not.
And it strikes me as some sort of super restrictive diet plan. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's January and I'm gonna do this keto thing or I'm gonna do this paleo thing and I really shouldn't have any carb or whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
trying to, you can lose weight a million different ways. But
Yeah.
I believe that the way that we eat plant-based nourishes us and the brain needs glucose to function. Your body needs starch
Mhm.
and starch is long lived. So if you have had the rice or the potatoes or the noodles, then you're full for 4 hours. And
Mhm.
it's that idea of packing up that little piece of meat. It's like, it just seems diet mentality to me.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start in the morning and I'm gonna have a bulletproof coffee and or who knows, vegetables for breakfast, and then I have to pack this tiny little portion for lunch. And it's like even calorie-based things, even calorie counting, like Weight Watchers or your Jenny Craig. At the end
Mhm.
of the night, you're like screaming, I want to eat, and writing it in your journal, I want to eat. It's like anything that's restriction and not listening to our bodies and not nourishing
Mhm.
our bodies. Like I was experimenting. I'm going to be putting more quick and easy recipes on the Real World Plant-Based Diet channel. And I'm going to be doing a little bit more with store-bought things just to save time,
Yay.
which I had
Okay.
done in the past. And so I found like some of these Kansas soups that were from that Gardein brand, I think. And so
Uh-huh.
little fake meats in them. One of them was like a beef and vegetable soup, all vegan. And I looked at the can, I was heating it up, and it said like the entire can, 230 calories. And I'm like, who can survive on 230 calories for their lunch?
Mhm.
I already had the whole bowl of brown rice in the oven warming up to put
That's what I was gonna say.
whole can of soup over top of. And
That's.
I serve my soups over top of a potato or over top of some
Yep.
brown rice. And then that right there, when you're getting more like 400, 500 calories and it's all warm and starchy, and it's like, that's a meal.
Yeah.
Some watery little 200 calorie can of something. And then some of them will say that's 2 servings. And I'm like, who eats 115 calories for their lunch?
Maybe a 5-year-old. I don't know. Oh my. Yeah, I was thinking that. I'm like, I'd pour that on a potato. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
So, do you choose, what about recipes? Like you talked about kind of freestyling it. Have you reached that point now because you know your flavor profile and what you like, or do you still have go-to recipes or places you go for recipes?
Well, since I've been on my own and stuff and been social and stuff, I've pretty much just been winging it. And it has surprised me how good I've been winging it, to be honest. Because I was a little nervous and a little scared because I would always have to have my recipes, always have to have all of the ingredients and all the things. And I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Because I was busier, gone to go more. I wasn't home all the time. And I'm like, Steph, just make some potatoes and hush, or just make some rice and get some tempeh and, throw soy sauce on it. And so it's sort of like when you go to college and you learn all this stuff and then you start teaching, or you go out in the world with what you've learned in college, and then you kind of go, I'm not going to remember everything I just learned in college, but you find that you learned exactly what you needed at that time. And that's what surprised me. It was almost like I put myself through a college, you know, with all the different people I followed and the recipes to the T. And then suddenly it was like, well, I can do this. I can kind of figure this out. And it surprised me. So I think it would surprise people to know that if you just think beans, a grain, and a green, just put that on your refrigerator. And every time you cook something that you like, or it went a long way, and you like my oatmeal in a jar thing, I put that down and I'll put that on the refrigerator. Like, oh yeah, I want to make this week. And I don't commit to what day I'm going to make it, because I always make stuff that makes a lot. If it doesn't make a lot, I'm not making it.
We do that too. And I don't commit to the day, but I have either recipes that I really like and enjoy. And I use Lindsay Nixon, Happy Herbivore type recipes.
Definitely.
Protective diet recipes, they all have, but I developed my own flavor profile. So when I pull up a recipe, I modify every time I cook. So which is why I'm going to share more on this channel this year of quick and easy modifications, or using a few more store-bought ingredients. Because I think we both are to the point now, because we've done it so long, is we know how to make it taste good. We know it's not going to end up a failure, because we'll spice it up the way that we need to spice it up. Or as you said, that, you know, not every meal has to be Thanksgiving. So every once in a while, I'll have something that turns out a little bland, whatever. It's like, it's okay. Get that, you know, bean rice mixture, whatever, in my belly. It was a little bland. I wouldn't make it again, but it's okay. It can fuel me for lunch to go do some massages that day or whatever.
Yes. I completely, I have a friend of mine, she's from Germany, and she absolutely abhors the cardboard, like paper plate thing. She thinks that's like a travesty. Those things should have never been invented in her mind. And she said she was single for like a really long time. And she goes, but every night I took out my bone china and I sat and I placed my placemat and I had my drink and everything. And I was like, really? She said, oh yeah. Like it was a thing. And you feel like you have dinner. And I was just listening to Lindsay Nixon has a webinar on addiction that I had ordered. Maybe you heard it too, but she was talking about how the brain makes these connections. So if you're overeating in your car, your brain puts that together. When I'm in my car, I overeat. When I'm watching TV, that's when I eat, right? And so your brain just kind of hooks those two together. So when you're in your car, you're thinking, oh, I need to go get something to eat or drink, right? And so it reminded me of my friend when she says, I don't do all that. I just eat. But it's a thing. You know, like it's on the bone china and it's like a thing. And I did that earlier today. And I was like, yeah, I felt like I ate. I felt like mentally, I felt like I ate. And it sounds like so boring, but I don't know. I think food is just such a metaphor for how we nourish ourselves.
Yeah.
And the time that we really give ourselves time to even look at the food on the plate?
Yes. Well, speaking of time, I don't want to keep you too long. And I just want to show you, this is probably a surprise to you, because you and I had talked earlier this week, and this is one of your tips. And I brought some visuals to show on video today. And this is around the topic of quick, easy, healthy. And you had also mentioned cheap, that eating this way can save so much money, or being so much money. And so what you had mentioned, and I know I've mentioned this in my other videos, is eating Larabars.
Oh God, I love Larabars
for snacks. I love Larabars too. They just have like nuts and fruit in them. And I know I've put links to order like a multi-pack. So I ordered off of Amazon a whole multi-pack, a little bit cheaper than buying them at the store. And my husband and I've been like chowing down on these. These are great, but you don't get very much. And then each one of these costs, I can't remember, like almost $2, I think, for a Larabar.
We get them at Walmart for like $1 each.
$1. Okay.
At Walmart, I find them. I get the peanut butter chocolate chip.
Mm-hmm.
I find it that Larabar in particular
Mm-hmm.
fills me up. It absolutely fills me up more than a Kind bar. Like it just, like I have to eat them kind of slow.
Yeah, you got to eat them slowly, but then you're like, well, you know, Larabars, you're like, I can just cook up some sweet potato.
Yes.
And you and I live down south, and I have a farmer's market that is year round, and all the farmers have sweet potatoes constantly down here. Like any farmer's market down south there, it's like, I swear, all year round. Sweet potatoes, they grow them like crazy, they store them like crazy. So I slice my sweet potatoes in half lengthwise, just like I do my potatoes. I've got videos about this, and I stick them on a parchment lined tray, 400 degrees, 45 minutes to an hour, closer to an hour if they're huge. And so just slice in half lengthwise, and they get all crispy and lovely on the inside. Your white potatoes do the same thing. And then Stephanie had mentioned that for snacks, she cuts them into little round pieces.
Yep, that's what I do right there with cinnamon.
Take that same potato and just cut little circles. And then, so this is a nice snack of a bunch of sweet potatoes, and I put cinnamon on there, and Stephanie's like, look, you can go even cheaper than your Larabars. Just cut up some sweet potato, put some cinnamon on. And then I took it one step further, and I take mine that are just potatoes cooked in half, and I just dice them. And then I pour a little bit of maple syrup.
Or balsamic vinegar too.
I do the cinnamon, I do the maple. And if you're not sweet, if you're more of a savory, you can do this with regular potatoes and just salt and pepper. I have an onion dip, tofu base, whatever, but potatoes are a great snack. They're a filling snack.
Yes.
I'll take something like this and I'll put it in a little to-go container with a lid, and I'll take that when I'm doing massage. And I'll, like your German friend, I take real dishes and real silverware, and I just get out my fork from home, and in between massages, I'll eat a bunch of that sweet potato with cinnamon and maple syrup. It is the best thing ever. It's like almost as good as any dessert I can think of. So I just share that tip from Stephanie. She's like, yeah, Larabars are good, but we can just cook up sweet potato, and it's a great snack.
And nutrition is just such the key. If your purpose is work at all, you know, if you love your job and you want to be good at your job and you want that energy from 8 o'clock at the car rider line and 4 o'clock when you get home, I mean, your nutrition is got to be on point. And it can't be on point unless you practice.
Yep.
And notice, how did I feel when I ate this for breakfast? How long did it sustain me? Did it sustain me? Was it just food, but it didn't really give me the zhuzh I want, you know? So like, play with it.
Yes.
You know, like some bars I eat them and I want 14 more because it's like I didn't feel like it did anything.
Yeah.
You know, but sweet potatoes out of a Ziploc bag, you know, I'm like, wow, you know, your blood sugar stays stable.
And when you say play with it, and like some things weren't so great, or they were too sugary, or how did I feel after that restaurant meal or whatever, that's that whole topic of progress, not perfection.
Yes.
Because
you're the boss of your body.
Yes. It's your life. It's your body. It has to fit with your lifestyle. Like following every single bit from a book or a download or whatever, you know, you will eventually adapt it to your lifestyle. Even if you find like a diet that's working really well, like we have plant-based diet works really well, but we adapt it to our lifestyle. And I don't like resonate with, oh, you're not doing a good enough a job. It's like you're doing what you need to do for your own life. And then if you go further, the longer you do it, like we have, and really listen to that, to your body and to your inner voice of how's that making me feel? And you and I have both been doing this for almost a decade, had a lot of weight loss success, health success, and, you know, plant-based is the way to go for us. And people listening to this channel, plant-based is the way to go, but we absolutely believe in progress, not perfection. And meal planning, I think, is a key thing as well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and it doesn't have to be these big, long, drawn out recipes every day. Find things that make leftovers. And I pop them up in their all little containers and stick them in there. You know, in fact, we were out to eat somewhere the other night. One of my friends said, I wish I had control like you. And I'm thinking, and I thought that was funny that she used the word control, because I don't consider myself controlling myself. I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a different way of looking at it. But like, I have to control myself versus, but this is what I want. I want those results.
Yeah. And it's like, you're like, I'm taking care of myself. I'm not controlling myself.
Yeah.
I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah. Love yourself.
Yes. All right. Any last things that you want to say to the real world plant-based diet?
I know. Jennifer is amazing. She walks her talk. She didn't know I was going to tell this, but I mean, she really walks her talk, and she's so empathetic. So if you are struggling, I highly recommend you talk to Jennifer, because she's such a cool chick. And thank you. And I'm so happy for everything you're doing. The world really needs people like you. And I know you're going to do great, girl.
Thank you, Stephanie. And before I stop recording this, I just want to say to the viewers, if you like these videos, feel free to give a thumbs up, subscribe down below. I will put links to all the different things that we talked about today in the description down below. I have a free meal planning guide that shows you my exact process for getting that idea of what I'm going to make that week, how to grocery shop for it, how to stock your house. So the link to the free meal planning guide is down below. And we have a Real World Plant-Based Diet Facebook group that is small but growing. So if you want some support in progress, not perfection type plant-based eating, I know Stephanie's in there and she'd be happy to answer any questions in the group as well. So all that information will be in the video description. And Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time to share what you've learned almost a decade of doing this and doing it in your busy life, and tips and tricks that can help people. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.